7 Flight Boss, wind 220 at 5. You are cleared for takeoff on your assigned time.
AOPA keeps flying safe, accessible, and fun by protecting your freedom to fly. We are the most trusted one-stop resource for all things related to general aviation. Become an AOPA pilot today.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the General Aviation Flyover of Washington, D.C. in celebration of the 85th anniversary of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. I'm Tom Haynes, longtime editor-in-chief at AOPA, and a pilot, journalist, aircraft owner, and we're gonna have a great day today. Joining me is Miles O'Brien, longtime journalist, pilot, and sometimes aircraft owner as well.
In between planes at the moment. But
yes.
Tom, I cannot tell you what a thrill it is to be here. What a seat we have on top of the Museum of American History. And I will tell you this, I think we've proven today that God is a pilot, because we had terrible weather yesterday. We have terrible weather forecast for tomorrow, and today it is just perfect here in Washington, D.C. We're going to see 55 aircraft, general aviation aircraft of all shapes and sizes and speeds, starting in the 30s all the way to present day. The 30s, of course, is important because that's when AOPA was began, and it'll take us right to the cutting-edge aircraft of today.
Right, and we're really grateful for the Smithsonian for hosting us here on the roof of the Museum of American History, and 15 groups of airplanes coming by. And they're going to come right down the Potomac River. They left from Frederick, Maryland. They're already on their way, some of them, en route down the Potomac River, and be coming right down the mall, right past the Lincoln Memorial, past the Washington Monument, and right by us here on the rooftop. And it's a really exciting time. AOPA has worked really hard to make this happen.
We are glad that the security agencies and the regulators were willing to make this happen. Among the things that are happening today, we're shutting down Washington National Airport, Reagan Airport, for 1 hour in order for this to happen, because we're going to be flying right into the approach to the runway there.
Right. And Miles, that's just an example of AOPA getting things done in Washington, D.C. In its 85-year history, it has been known for coming to D.C., advocating for its members. The organization was founded 85 years ago in 1939 in Philadelphia by a group of businessmen who were aviation enthusiasts and pilots, and they were concerned about what was happening in Europe with the start of World War II. And so they wanted to make sure that general aviation and private aircraft with flying was protected. So they formed this organization to bring pilots together and make sure that they had a voice in Washington, D.C. It's been very effective. The organization has grown tremendously over the years to some 300,000 members. And actually there are AOPAs in 82 countries around the world. And interestingly, 1939, when AOPA was formed, is the same year that President Franklin Roosevelt also signed a proclamation declaring a National Aviation Day. So here we are celebrating 85th National Aviation Day as well.
We live in a nation that has an amazing ability for general aviation pilots to fly freely throughout the country. And it is no coincidence that AOPA is here for 85 years. We have that freedom. As much as anything, we can owe it to this organization. So it's important also not just to recognize AOPA, but let's talk about exactly what general aviation is. It's not specific aviation. It covers a wide spectrum. And I think a simple way to think of it, because it is so varied, is it's not military and it's not airlines. Pretty much everything else we call general aviation. And we're going to see examples of all this stuff.
There's also a huge economic impact that I don't think a lot of people understand. Some $150 billion a year in economic impact comes out of the general aviation community. 1 million jobs across the country are related to this industry, and many of them, these airplanes that we're going to see today, are built in small towns across the United States. We couldn't do this without some support for some others. We have presenting sponsors today include the Maryland Department of Transportation's Aviation Administration, Titan Aerobatics, and supporting sponsors include Aerial Exposure, AMBA, Piper Aircraft, Signature Aviation, and Zip Aviation as well. Golden One is the Golden Age group. It includes a Beech Stagger Wing flown by Mark Baker, a Howard DGA, which is an incredibly beautiful airplane, a Waco UPF-7, which is an open cockpit biplane, and a Fairchild 24, which is a very interesting airplane as well.
And when we say golden age, what do we mean by golden age, Tom?
The golden age of aviation is considered the 1920s and the 1930s, and the reason for that is because it was an era when aviation was just exploding. I mean, think about that. It's, only 15 years, 12 years after the Wright brothers first flew and then sort of began perfecting aviation a little bit.
Hey, Tom?
Yes?
Golden One's coming by you.
Oh, here comes Golden One.
All right, here we go. The Beech Stagger Wing. Let's talk about that beautiful aircraft piloted by the president of AOPA, Mark Baker. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I got Mark on the radio. Mark, what's it look like from up there?
Once in a lifetime, super cool.
That's a pilot term, super cool.
Yeah, that's a very professional pilot term we're saying. Yeah, you look great.
It is up here, I gotta tell you, looking at the level here to Monument, gonna make the left turn here around Lincoln and head your way.
There they are.
Okay.
Sight now.
Yep, we can see you now. The camera's got you, so safe flying, and we'll catch you back in Frederick.
So the Beech 17 Stagger Wing, perhaps one of the most beautiful aircraft ever built.
Yeah.
You could make an argument to that
Yes.
case. Of course, that's a subjective thing.
Right.
First one flew in 1932. This is a 34 model that Mark Baker owns and flies.
And now in the shot we've got looks like the Howard DGA, which is a radial engine airplane, came out about the same time as the Beech 18, and was a competitor at the time, VIP transport and that sort of thing, and is just credible.
DGA stands for darn good airplane, right? Or something like that.
Something like that.
And then, of course, the Waco.
Waco, yeah.
Let's talk about that. That's a famous name.
Open cockpit biplane, famous trainer used in World War II, and still out there today. I mean, some cases they're flying, being used for crop dusting and that sort of thing until not too long ago. So
and we should say, since we're talking about general aviation here, there was a civilian pilot training program during World War II, which used this aircraft heavily. The idea was they wanted to get as many people proficient in cockpits alongside the war effort as you can imagine. So this is where general aviation makes its connection to military aviation,
right.
And what a beautiful group of aircraft we just saw there.
Yeah, the last one I went through was the Fairchild 24, which also came out, in the 30s. It was actually a pretty rare airplane, not that many of them there. All right, it looks like our next group is approaching. This group is called the post-war boom, and there was a big boom in aviation right after the war. Cessna 170 in there, a Piper Tri-Pacer, a Beech VTOL Bonanza, a Globe Swift, and a North American Navion is part of this group. And there were a bunch of military pilots that after the war, they came and converted their military certificates to civilian ones, so they had a big jump in pilot population. And among the most popular airplanes that came out shortly thereafter is the Cessna 170.
Of course, right there we're looking at the flying milk stool, which
That's
is
right.
the Piper Tri-Pacer.
Right.
This particular aircraft, there's a tailwheel version and a tricycle version of this one. And it was heavily used in training of pilots, obviously.
It was, and called a short wing Piper because the wings on it are pretty short.
There you go.
Yep. Now I can see we've got the Beech Bonanza. This is a VTOL Bonanza flown by Adrian Eichhorn. The Bonanza is an iconic airplane. He flew this airplane around the world by himself, and he also flew it to the North Pole. Incredible feat. It's got 100-gallon tit tanks on each wing, and the Bonanza is just an amazing airplane that you can do things like that with. It's been out, originally developed in 1947. And then they came out with several other models, and we're going to see one of the other ones, the F-33, coming up later in the show.
Now, let's move into the Globe Swift. And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Globe Swift was developed from the Culver Cadet, and it is a cool, sporty little airplane, metal, retractable gear, which was unusual at the time, particularly for a little airplane like this. And it's pretty sporty. There's been lots and lots of upgrades made to them over the years, bigger engines and other modifications. And right behind that, we've got the North American Navion. And again, like a lot of the other companies after the war, North American, after producing the P-51 and a lot of classic airplanes that were very important in the war, the B-25 Mitchell, for example, a T-6 Texan, they wanted to get into civilian aviation. And one of their products was the Navion, which is a nice four-place traveling airplane, kind of a competitor to the Bonanza, and did very well in the general aviation market.
That post-war boom,
yes.
It wasn't as much, I think, as a lot of people expected, but it was a boom. You had a lot of pilots coming out of the military. You had the GI Bill, which financed a lot of people getting their private pilot's license. Gas was cheap, the country was big, etc.
Right.
That really was, in many respects, the absolute apex peak of general aviation flying in this country, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. Then you move into the 60s and 70s. There was a lot of growth then as well. And of course, the important part of that whole ecosystem are training aircraft. How do we take people both from just for recreational purposes, but also airline pilots? Where do they come from? Well, they mostly come from the general aviation, because these days the military is not putting out that many pilots. While that was once a main feeder to the airlines, today general aviation is the primary feeder for the airlines. And that's what we've got up next is a couple of training airplanes. We've got a Cessna 172 en route and a Piper Archer. And so they'll be coming on the scene here in just a moment.
So, and the 172 is the most produced aircraft, full stop, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's it.
Period. End
in
of
any
sentence.
That
Right,
is
right.
it. I forget
Right.
how many. What's the
But
number we have?
I think it's
somewhere?
40,000.
44,000 aircraft. Nothing comes close to that.
Right. The 172 came out in, I think, 1956, certified in like 1957, and actually in the market in about 1957.
There it is. It's a venerable site. It's funny, people who don't know much about aviation, little planes, say, oh, it's a Cessna.
Right.
And this is really what, they're thinking. There's a lot, as you're finding out today, there's many other types of aircraft in the general aviation panoply, but this is kind of the iconic general aviation aircraft, a total workhorse. I don't know of any pilot who does, one way or another, hasn't had time in a 172.
Yeah,
Most everybody goes through them,
I
right?
agree. Everybody's pretty much flown a 172. And this one is actually owned by AOPA. Eric Webb is flying that, AOPA social media expert.
Now, they're a competitor to Cessna in the training realm, of course, is Piper. We've already mentioned Piper.
Right.
At this stage of the game, Piper is still building a lot of training aircraft.
They really are.
And Cessna less so, right?
Yeah, Cessna's still building lots of airplanes too, but not. I mean, compared to the amount they built in the 70s,
right,
for example, it's much smaller. But Piper has stayed there. Piper was in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania for decades, and then in 1960 they introduced the PA-28, which they started building out of a new factory in Vero Beach, Florida. And that's what we see here today as an Archer 3, which is a variant of the original PA-20 or PA-28. There have been many variants with some of the retractable gear. Some of them actually with multiple engines are really derivatives from an airframe standpoint of that original 1960 airplane.
And we have a helicopter coming in here now, which is our next phase. We can't overlook vertical flight. We've seen fixed wing aircraft. Let's talk about the vertical world.
Yeah, so this is an R-44 coming up here, which is from Robinson, built in Torrance, California. And it's a little big brother of the R-22. It's a four-place piston-powered helicopter, one of the most popular helicopters in the world, and they really are shipped all over the world. The other ones in this flight are the Enstrom 480B, which is a turbine helicopter, so it's got basically a jet engine turning that rotor on top. And then right behind it is the Airbus EC-120, which is a European helicopter, also a turbine. And helicopters are such an important part of general aviation. Their ability to do special work, whether it's sightseeing, logging in a very environmentally friendly way, where they're not destroying a lot of ground structure, and that sort of thing. So helicopters play an important role in firefighting, police, border patrol, and all that sort of thing.
Helicopters also, frankly, if you've had any time in them, they are a ton of fun to fly. It's a little bit like standing on a beach ball and balancing, and it's
Yes,
a little
it
different than flying a fixed-wing aircraft, but they are an amazing, fun thing to fly.
Right. And speaking of fun,
Yeah.
next up is the Backcountry group, right? And so that's like General Aviation's version of backcountry camping and that sort of thing. We've got our own version where we take some really specialty airplanes with big tires and some stall kits on them to make them fly really slowly, safely. And we put them out in the backcountry in dirt strips, gravel strips, mountain strips, and places like that. So that's what's coming up next.
But here you go. You see those big fat tires that allows them to land on, muddy, sandy,
Right.
and they can drop you into places that, well, it's kind of hair raising flying with them if you're not used to it, but they know how to do it. And you have obviously one of the key things is to have what we call low stall speed, which is the aircraft can still stay in the air at a low number, which allows you to have less of a landing roll. Simple as that, right?
Right. This is a Carbon Cub, actually from Yakima, Washington, flown by Brad Dahm, who's a vice president there. The next airplane that's coming up in a minute is the Aviat Husky, and very capable in the backcountry with plenty of performance. The Husky is on floats, flown by Greg Herrick, and that's built in Afton, Wyoming. Now we've got a Cessna 180 showing up in there, I believe, that's it. And that is flown by Katie Pribble out of Montana. She is a member of the staff of the AOPA Foundation and also a rancher. Her family owns a ranch, and she took this tailwheel airplane and flew it back to the ranch to a strip that her dad built.
That's the airplane known as Buck. And behind it, I believe we're looking at the Kodiak. Is that right? That's the Kodiak 900.
That is.
And this is quite a machine. A little more of an investment than Buck. A lot more bucks than Buck.
That's true.
About $3 million for this one. But this thing will take you in high style and comfort all the way into the backcountry.
Right. It's single engine turboprop. So the other airplanes we've been looking at for the most part are piston powered. This is a turboprop, and very capable. It's got a little brother called the Kodiak 100. This is the Kodiak 900. The company started in Idaho. It's now owned by a French company called Dower, but they're still being built in Idaho. The other end of the spectrum, though, we've got the light sport aircraft, which are very light single-engine airplanes, limited to basically 2 seats with people with sport pilot certificates fly them often, although anybody with a private pilot or anything better than that can fly a light sport aircraft as well. Up first is the Vans RV-12, which is a super airplane. I owned one of these for a while. It is so much fun to fly. Yeah. It's got a canopy, a little Rotax engine, and just a hoot. And they build a variety of airplanes. We're going to see a couple more of them later, but the RV-12 is one of them. We also have in this group the TL Sport Sting, which is one of the few airplanes we have here today that's not built in the United States. It's built in Czechoslovakia. Eastern European countries are very innovative when it comes to aviation and do a great job of producing some very economical and capable airplanes. We've got the Icon coming up, which is a unique airplane in that it's a light sport airplane that has an amphibious hull on it, so it can land on water. It's flying right by the Washington Monument right now, and it is all composite. It's got a Rotax engine with a pusher propeller, so the engine is on top of the fuselage, pushing the airplane forward, and you can land on water, put the wheels down, and taxi up a ramp onto land and onto a runway, and then take off on the runway if you want to. And then speaking of seaplanes, we've got a whole pack of them coming up next. We've got a Cessna Caravan on floats, a Cessna 182, and a de Havilland Beaver on floats. And this is a really interesting part of general aviation. You know, the cool thing is we've got, 85% of the planet discovered with water? Yes. So let's build some airplanes that can go there.
Yes.
And these airplanes can land in really remote places and just get out and basically dock them or pull them over to shore and tie them down and leave no mark. You can go there and hang out and leave no mark. It's pretty
paddle
neat.
Up to the shore, camp, and you're right, never really leave a trace.
Right. That's the Caravan there, on amphibious floats from Whip Air. And so that can also land on water and then taxi up onto land when it's amphibious. And as is the Cessna 182 behind it. It's amazing how these we put floats on an airplane, it looks like a lot of drag, right? It should be really draggy, and it's really not so bad. I got my Seaplane rating and a Cessna 172 on floats, and it really was not that draggy. The third airplane here is the de Havilland Beaver, and it is an awesome airplane, built in Canada.
It's an iconic aircraft.
It really is.
Radial engine.
If you've done any sightseeing flights in a float plane in Alaska, for example, it probably was in a de Havilland Beaver. So our next group is very interesting. It's Homebuilt. And this is a fascinating part of general aviation as well, in that you can build your own airplane, roll your own, so to speak. The deal is you have to build 40 or 51% of it. 49% can be built in a factory, but 51% has to be built by an amateur. It's called experimental amateur built. And so that's what's coming up next.
It's hard to overstate the amount of passion these people have for their aircraft and what they do.
It really is. It's phenomenal what they do, and the craftsmanship is incredible. Our first airplane in this group, which you're going to see in a minute, is a HATS. It's an open cockpit biplane, and it was built by an AOPA employee, Carlos Illers, who is a phenomenal mechanic and just a real craftsman. This airplane that you're going to see in just a minute won one of the highest awards that the Experimental Aircraft Association awards to people who build airplanes. It is beautiful. It's got a little radial engine in it that comes from Australia, and Carlo built the whole thing from plans. So the company ships you a stack of paper.
Oh boy.
And like 3 years later, you roll out of your hangar an airplane.
To say that's daunting doesn't really do it justice. So, a lot of people who don't know a lot about aviation, they might say, well, is that safe? But of course, it's an experimental category. It's kind of, you're building it for yourself.
Right.
But the numbers would tell you they are pretty safe, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, they've gotten much better, and the airplanes have gotten much more sophisticated. This looks like an old airplane, right? But it's not. It's a brand new airplane, and it's got a lot of new technology incorporated into it, a lot of safety features and that sort of thing. Up next, we've got Vans RV4 and a pair of Vans RV8s. Look at that formation coming in now. What's interesting about this industry also is how much it's changed. While the HATS is a new airplane built from plans, most of the airplanes, the kit airplanes you see today, are experimental airplanes, are from kits. So you'll get a kit that comes in sort of sub-assemblies that you will assemble. So it's much less work, still thousands of hours, but much less work than they used to be. And Vans has really become expert at that. Building these kit airplanes, shipping out the kits to people all over the world, who assemble them in their garage, in their hangar, some living rooms sometimes, no kidding. They put them together, and they're amazing at performance. Little 180 horsepower Lycoming engine going 200 miles per hour. Up next, we've got the rapid growth era, and that was really in the 60s and 70s when things went nuts in aviation. And we've got several airplanes in this group. We've got a Rockwell Commander 112, a Beech F-33 Bonanza, a Cessna 182, a really interesting Beech Baron that we got to talk some about because of what's happening with it, a Mooney Ovation, and a Grumman Cheetah. So first up is the Rockwell 112, which is a beautiful airplane. It's I always said if you gave a little kid a piece of paper and asked him to draw you an airplane, it would look like a 112.
The horizontal stabilizer goes right through the vertical stabilizer, what we call the upright tail there. Right. So it makes what appears to be like a cross, hence cruciform. And it's got a very stylistic look, doesn't it? Yeah.
Not the fastest airplane in the world, but very comfortable. Doors on each side, which not all airplanes have, so it's easy to get in and out and that sort of thing. Up next is another Bonanza. We saw the V-tail Bonanza, the one by a while ago, Adrian's airplane, the one around the world.
Made me nostalgic.
This this is an F-33, which is a somewhat later model coming up next. The Beech Bonanza is just an iconic airplane, been in production since 1947 continuously through a variety of different types. And it looks like now we've got a shot of the 182. We saw 182 on amphibious floats a while ago. This is one on regular landing gear. And it's just a great personal airplane. The 182 is so capable, bigger, faster than the 172 that we saw, but still able to get in and out of really short strips and carry a good load. So Cessna has done an amazing job in designing their airplane. Looks like now we've got a Mooney Ovation in the shot. Mooney is built in Kerrville, Texas. It's a very historic company. Right now they're really not building much. They've kind of had some hard times lately, but this is one of the the steel tube airplanes that we talked about. It's got an amazingly strong steel tube around the cabin that helps really protect you if you were in an accident. Up next, we've got the Beech Baron, and we got to talk about this one because this is a twin-engine, basically Bonanza, if you will. And this one is unusual in that one engine is burning traditional 100 low lead avgas. So it's got a little bit of lead in it, which all of our aviation gasoline does, and we're trying to get rid of it because we don't want to emit lead anymore into the atmosphere. The other engine is burning a new 100 unleaded fuel called G100UL. And so it's a test that AOPA has been doing to basically look at the impact of one fuel versus the other in those engines. They're being carefully monitored and checking on a regular basis to see if there's any change to the engine. And what they're finding generally is that the engine with the unleaded fuel in it actually is in much better condition inside than the one with the leaded fuel.
As we see the Grumman Cheetah go by, I just want to pick up on that point. The reason lead is in aviation fuel is to avoid the knocking situation that happens with high octane fuels.
Right.
And so to avoid that, it lowers the temperature just enough to stop that detonation, that premature detonation. And but hopefully these new formulas will do the same job.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom and Miles, the Albatross coming around the Lincoln Memorial here momentarily.
All right, that's Kurt Brown we're listening to.
Yeah, so we've got the Albatross coming in. So yeah, Kurt, talk to us.
Hey, it's great. It's beautiful, and this is the only country in the world that we get to do this kind of flying. Thanks very much to AOPA for making this possible.
Kurt Brown.
All right, Kurt, thanks for the help. We also had flying through the shot there was an amazing airplane, the Fireboss, which is basically an ag airplane, a big ag airplane that they've converted to a firefighter with floats on it from Whip Air that actually can come swooping into a lake, scoop up water on the fly, go away and go fight a fire and drop that water, and it's just an amazing development.
And it has a lot of utility in agriculture for fertilizing and crop dusting and so forth.
Right. And speaking of cool airplanes, we got some amazing stuff coming up next in the Airshow group. And when you go to the air shows, you get to see these airplanes doing awesome things in the sky, and you got to wonder, how can they do that? When all the aerobatics and that sort of thing. And the first airplane in our group is a game bird, a GB1 game bird, which was developed by Philip Steinbach with support from, among others, Stuart Walton of the Walmart family.
A very avid pilot.
And so Philip had this idea for this very high performance aerobatic airplane, and so he and Stuart got together. Stuart helped fund it, built a factory in Bentonville, Arkansas.
And right behind him, in a super decathlon, is the legendary Pete Muntean, the aviation correspondent for CNN, at the controls of his aerobatic decathlon. Let's check in with Pete.
Hey Pete, loud and clear here. How goes it there?
Man, this is so awesome and surreal. I'm looking right at the Air and Space Museum, where I would go with my late parents who instilled a love of flying in me. They followed through. I see a lot of young people down there, and for the young at heart, it is never too late to learn to fly. Come and join us. General aviation is the coolest thing, the ultimate freedom. We have it so good here in the United States of America, and we're so thrilled to be able to share it with you all on the ground.
Pete Muntean, you are really the face of aviation in many respects all over the world, and you definitely practice what you preach. Have a safe flight.
Later.
Oh, and following Pete is a Pitts S2C, which Pitts was the iconic airplane in aerobatic flying for a long time. It's been eclipsed by some more capable airplanes like the Game Bird that we just saw. But this one is flown by an amazing guy. Bill Finnegan is awesome. He is 86 years old, 18,000 hours of flying, retired from the reserves as a two-star admiral. And he's a local legend around this part of the world.
And he taught Pete's mother, who was an Airshow performer, to fly. So there's all the aviation is a family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we really are talking about a family here, and I see that lumbering DC-3 out there.
Right. Coming up first, though, is the Spartan Executive, which is like an executive airplane that has become popular in the airshow circuit, as just because it's so beautiful. It is flown by Rob Templeton from Triple Tree, which is this incredible 7,000-foot grass runway down in South Carolina. It is just an incredible place. They've done so much for aviation. And speaking of having done a lot for aviation, there is the DC-3 that you see now. This is Yukon Sourdough, which was it's a local airplane here in this part of the world from Hagerstown, Maryland, in a museum up there. The people there have faithfully restored this thing. Of course, the DC-3 is probably one of the most famous airplanes ever. It was used during World War II. They often say the only replacement for a DC-3 is another DC-3. The safety and technology chapter, we've called this, because these are some airplanes that are relatively new, that have infused some new technology, new thinking, including the Diamond DA-40NG, which is coming up. Designed in Austria, it's a composite airplane, and it has a diesel engine in it, which, diesels have been around obviously in the automotive side forever, but it's a fairly new thing in aviation. And the cool thing is they burn jet fuel, which is widely available around the world and actually cheaper than the aviation gasoline that we have. And then next up after the DA-40 is a Cirrus SR-22, another fascinating airplane. Was the first one delivered in 1999, and they've become the #1 seller of piston-powered airplanes in the world for the last probably 10 years or so anyhow.
A fabulous aircraft. The brothers Klattmeyer, Alan and Dale, who built this, got one of their inspirations out of a mid-air collision, which Alan survived.
Yes.
And made him come up with the insight that maybe putting a parachute on board an aircraft, a single-engine aircraft, might be a level of safety. And so it has a parachute for the entire airframe, which is sort of the last resort measure, which if you cannot get the airplane safely to the ground and you safely, you pull that chute and down you come underneath that parachute. And quite a few people are walking the planet today.
265. I was talking to Todd Simmons from Cirrus last night. 265 people walking around today. There have been 129 chute pulls, which saved 265 lives, which is just pretty amazing. And that's only in the last 20 years.
Yeah. Cirrus has developed a what they call its Vision Jet. And once again, we're going back to that V-tail here. You see it there, that distinctive V-tail, which the Bonanza, a few aircraft along the way have done that. Why the V-tail?
Well, there's reduced drag. In this case, they did it because they mounted that. It's a single-engine jet, so they mounted that jet on top of the engine, or on top of the fuselage, and they needed they didn't want the tail to be right behind that engine, so they made it a V-tail, so it is really unusual for that purpose. But the airplane is awesome in that it has a parachute like the piston-powered airplanes. It also has auto throttles and a really new concept called auto land, which I've actually got to do one of these almost to the ground, where if the pilot becomes incapacitated, the passenger can push a button in the airplane and it will find a suitable runway and land the airplane on that runway and automatically brake and stop the airplane, which is cool. Just part of the technology. This is one of the most advanced technology airplanes in our group today.
All right, we're coming around the corner now into another era. We've got the Beech King Air 200 and a Cessna Citation, so we're getting into a little higher performance, what you might call business aviation, I suppose. Still general aviation, though. And this is the venerable King Air. Right,
one of the most popular, probably the most popular twin-engine turboprop ever built. There have been a variety of King Airs built over the years. Right behind it is a Learjet, the Lear 35. The Learjet designed by Bill Lear in Wichita, and was very popular when it came out in the 60s. It's been eclipsed a little bit from a production standpoint by the Citation line, which is the third airplane we're seeing up there, the CJ3. And it is the Citation line's #1 produced line of business jets in the world.
So we were talking earlier about this phenomenon of, we saw the King Air, twin turbine engines. Turbine engines are essentially a jet engine with a propeller, for lack of a more sophisticated explanation. The trend in aviation has been to have one of these engines. And there's a lot of aircraft right now, very exciting, including Beechcraft coming out soon with what's called the Denali.
Yes.
But there's been a series of interesting aircraft that are single-engine turbine, extremely safe, extremely capable, fast, and more efficient on fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really the key issue is the efficiency of having to only feed one engine and maintain one engine and still get great performance and still be very safe, because these turbine engines are so reliable. We saw the Caravan earlier. That was a real pioneer in the single engine turboprop market. In this group, we've got a TBM 850, and a Piper 700 Fury, which is the newest airplane in our lineup today, just certified about 3 months ago.
Here comes that TBM, and that we have Bill Trimble, who is the chairman of the AOPA Board of Trustees, at the controls of his TBM 850, a fabulous machine, and he's got that about as slow as that thing will go, I think.
Right. That's about north of 300 knot airplane, which is pretty awesome, amazing performance. Built in France, and it's by Dower, which is the same company that owns Kodiak now, the company, the airplane that's built out in Idaho. Up next is the Piper 700 Fury, and as I said, that's the newest airplane in our group. Just certified a few weeks ago. Single engine turboprop, 300 knots. It has auto land as well. Auto throttles and auto brakes, and is just a beautiful airplane and very capable, built in Vero Beach, Florida.
And Titan 1 checking in, we're over the island.
Right. I think we have got a spectacle of noise and sight that is pretty extraordinary headed our way. Let's check in.
Yeah, we've got Titan team. Go for it. Tell us what's up there.
Yeah, it's great, man. What a beautiful day. There's a lot of people around the monument, and we're having a great time flying. Thank you, AOPA, for what you've done. Thank you, Titan Fuel, for being a supporter. And here we go. We're coming down the roof right now.
All right, smoke on, guys.
Yeah, the smoke's coming on.
So these are T6s.
These are T6 Texans, North American T6 Texans, and these guys fly together all the time, all over the country in air shows. And these have these amazing radial engines, and we're just going to shut up for a minute.
Yeah, let's listen.
This is our final act, folks. We're going to have a quick wrap up, and listen quietly. Listen to these engines.
And y'all got a great crowd down there. A lot of people watching.
Wow.
Awesome. I gotta say, that never gets old, does it? I gotta say, maybe
doesn't,
we're just propeller heads, but I think that's pretty darn cool.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as I said, those guys fly together all the time and are just wonderful at it, and they do an amazing night air show routine. And if you haven't seen a night air show, you got to go do it at EA Adventure or Sun and Fun or someplace like that, because it's just a whole different experience to get to see lights on these things and some of the amazing things that they do at night. I hope all y'all enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, consider joining AOPA. It's an amazing organization, been around 85 years, we hear, and going to be around for a long time more, and helping to protect general aviation around the world, really.
You know, it's the kind of thing that obviously appeals to those of us who love aviation, but I'm looking down at the mall there.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of people stopping their tracks looking to the sky. So there was something that connects with people, seeing objects in the air flying like that, and I think we did that today, and it was a real thrill to be a part of it.
Right.
So happy anniversary, AOPA. Here's to another great 85 years ahead.
Yeah, an historic event today to be able to fly through this airspace. We really appreciate all the cooperation of the federal agencies that made it happen. And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time, whenever that is.